So I'll start off with sort of the bad news. The way we do it today is really fundamentally pretty broken. Um, it's this sort of like, assumption that there's actually a time that security gets with the product before it gets to production, which is it's kind of an old way of thinking, but they still have this sort of mentalities that went with that, like gatekeeping. There's no way that if you have a team that's following DevOps, that they're going to be releasing potentially up to multiple times a day to production. And even if it's every 2 weeks or even every 2 months, security can't do a full audit of that and gatekeep into production very effectively and without a lot of resources. So that's the first bullet there is the thing that everyone says is the problem with the traditional way of doing security, the current operating model with security, and why DevSecOps is sort of the new model. But I think there's some more insidious problems with it. So this work involves the security people finding things wrong with the engineer's work, and then they have to go call the engineer's baby ugly to them. And it's time-consuming work, and a lot of times, the engineers don't want to hear it. By the time the feedback comes to them, they've already moved on to several other features, and the whole thing is just an annoyance to them, and they'll do the minimum they can to get it to go away. It's very confrontational. You often get a response that is like, what's the minimum I can do to get you to stop bothering me? And that's not a very effective way usually not a very effective answer. Are often out of date. Like even just the whole idea of gatekeeping is out of date. But a lot of times the policies themselves, the specifics of the policies, just sort of don't fit with the way modern development is done, and so that's friction. And so a lot of times the security people choose not to enforce all of them. But when you selectively enforce them, it seems arbitrary, and you get this broken window effect. Well, if I can ignore those policies, why can't I ignore all of them? And so I would argue that while that you need, also full audits are too much information and depressing. So you can't audit to those policies. You'd never get any response that you would be healthy for that. So how do you fix this? How do you get over this? Well, there's a number of challenges, and I'm not going to get to all of them today in this short time, but I'll try to address sort of the biggest ones. And the first one that you have to think about is essentially how people think about AppSec. And so a lot of times AppSec leaders think that they can fix these problems that I described by this list of things. Create more relevant and consumable policies so that they aren't outdated. Get better at enforcing the policy, so more stick. Implement the right metrics-based incentives, more carrot. Train more. Oh, it's just that they don't know. And if we train them, they'll know, and then it'll be all better. Collaborate better. Let's all hug it out, and let's just sort of work together better. Buy new tools. So almost all of these are really good things, actually, but they are not sufficient, and they're not going to solve the problem. So I have this sort of cultural transformation approach that I'm going to introduce you to that will allow you to fundamentally transform the process, the operating model you use to do AppSec from whatever it is today to a modern DevSecOps approach to it. And it uses a lot of the concepts of DevOps, which is something they're already familiar with. By the way, just to sort of give you some motivation to stick with it, this is the process essentially I developed, this transformation blueprint process at Comcast with lots of companies in a consultative sort of mode. But at Comcast, I captured the data for it. And the teams that went through this program where they took more ownership and did it the way I'm going to describe here, they had 1/6 as many vulnerabilities in production as the other teams that hadn't gone through. But also the number was roughly about 1/6 also for comparing to the number of vulnerabilities they had before they entered my program and started doing it. And we can run this program with 1/4 as many people. And it was so effective, we scaled it to all 600 teams at Comcast, and they essentially shut down the old AppSec program by the time we got to critical mass on this. You pretty much had to onboard to my way to the program that I developed there.